Hey everyone, and thank you for tuning in to your favorite biggest little soccer podcast on the internet, Stateside Footy. And boy, oh boy, do we have a show for you guys tonight. It is the 2025 MLS season preview. And joining me tonight, I have two of the best in the house tonight. From Mass Report, it's Ty Fisher. Ty, how you doing tonight, my man?
Not too bad, Steve. How are you?
I not bad at all, man. I'm just trying to get over this Great Lakes winter, but we're plugging along a little bit.
Yeah,
I do
fair.
appreciate you. Yeah, I do appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule. And from Prost International, it's somebody who is who is around these parts is well known. It's Jeff Lageson. Jeff, how's everything back in my hometown, man?
It's cold. It's like I've got that weather here. It's like it misses you and wants you to come visit.
Yeah, yeah. I'll say this, man. I'd rather take a Pacific Northwest winter than a Great Lakes winter. But that being said, I'm the one that put myself out here, so it is what it is, man. I can't complain. I can't come off looking like a hypocrite about the weather. Yeah, I made the decision a couple years back. But all right, enough about the weather. It is time for the 2025 MLS season preview as we are just about a week and a half, 2 weeks away from the opening kick. A lot of good off-season transactions have come through the door from Seattle to Columbus and everywhere in between. If you want to be a part of tonight's show, all you have to do is drop a comment in the comment section tonight. That's going to be open as well, too. But make sure you hit the like and subscribe button because this one's going to be a banger. Before we get into the preview, we do have a big, some big news that came down the wire just a little bit early. I believe, Ty, I think you retweeted this one. Lucho Acosta is no longer a member of FC Cincinnati as FC Dallas paid $5 million plus bonuses to bring the Talisman down to Dallas. I think everybody was kind of wondering what the hell FC Dallas's offseason was, where that was going. A lot of outgoings, but this is a big one, and they absolutely need it as well too. As they have a pretty decent striker, and Peter Musa. I think he's from the Czech Republic, and so now they actually have that number 10 underneath them, that playmaker, former MLS MVP. Go ahead and Ty, we'll start with you, man. What did you make of this? What did you make of this news? As one of the best players in the league leaves the great state of Ohio for Texas.
Well, I can certainly say Hellas Real is going to have a huge makeover. That's for sure. But I mean, a star player wants a move. A star player gets a move. You know what I mean? Cincinnati loses a good one. I've always highly rated Lucho Acosta. Though he played for the rival, I always thought he was a talented player with DC United, with Cincinnati also. One of the best midfielders I've ever seen on the ball, and just overall a good guy. A player wants to move. He wants to move, so he gets the move that he wanted. It's a shock though, because I figured that Cincinnati would have done everything that they could to keep him, but apparently Chris Albright couldn't, dot his I's, cross his T's enough. So it's a good move for Dallas, honestly. With the loss of Jesus Ferreira, you bring in Lucho Acosta. As you mentioned, Peter Musa up top. So good pairing with Acosta and Musa, and I think Dallas could make a charge towards a wild card with the addition of Acosta. But other than that, I think Cincinnati is on the verge of bringing in that Evander guy from Portland.
Yeah, I was just going there.
Yeah, so it's a like for like in my situation, in my opinion, but it's definitely not going to be the same when Cincinnati plays Columbus Crew this year.
Jeff, Ty just mentioned it. Lucho Acosta and Chris Albright did not get along. As a matter of fact, the Cincinnati board came out publicly and backed Albright. So now, I don't necessarily think this was, sweat off the back of Cincinnati because, as we just mentioned, there's a possible of them taking a run at Evander. It almost feels like that's untenable down in Portland. What did you make of Lucho Acosta heading to FC Dallas?
I think the timing of it is interesting in that, we're at a point now where Champions Cup matches and regular season just about to hit, and then suddenly a big move like this comes, which means that it was a bit of they had to do something to rectify the problem before the regular season hit. It definitely changes the viewpoint of how FC Dallas's offseason went entirely. You go from a team that looked like they had contracted and was going to kind of look at maybe placing players in C, and then suddenly this opportunity comes and they get ambitious again and replace a lot of what they lost with that. So suddenly Dallas's offseason completely looks different, but they bring him in like right before now the start. So this has to be a move that builds on what we're talking about here with the board. This is a move that probably had to happen as opposed to anybody who wanted to happen.
Right, because Velasco is gone, Ferrer is gone, Paul Arriola is gone as well too, and I think they're sitting on $25 million in the black as far as the transfer market goes. That was kind of like the big, that was kind of the big question is, will they bring in a big time 10? Because as we mentioned, Evander, the thought is that he's not long for Portland. If you're Portland though, can that be rectified between those two? Jeff?
It seems like these situations, by the time we get to the point where the public really knows about them, they have to be festering for a while. So if we're at a point now where it's right before the season, they're talking about the move, probably not rectifiable, because you don't want to start the season then with him. Then you can't do anything until the summer.
Right.
And I have a feeling that this might expedite that because it cleared a path. It sets the stage for Cincinnati to be able to do it. And now Portland's hand could be forced.
Absolutely. The last piece of news before we get into our business tonight, as far as the U.S. men's national team news is concerned, Ricardo Pepi is out for the rest of the season with a knee injury. And, of course, the shaky shoulder of Flo Balogun leaves the door open for Josh Sargent, who is back now with Norwich City. And by the way, he's scored in 3 straight now and looking like he's regaining his form. I would probably assume you guys that come the Nations League when the roster is announced, Josh Sargent's probably going to be that starting 9, correct?
Yeah, I think with the absence of Pepe, you're kind of missing that quiet guy up front that can just pull a goal out of thin air whenever he wants to, right? But then on the other hand, you have an informed striker in Josh Sargent, who is scoring goals left and right, putting Norwich City back into what I say its relevancy, right? So I think Potts is going to have a hard time choosing between Josh and whoever else he's going to call up, but I think Josh Sargent is going to get that starting role throughout Nations League quite often.
Yeah, especially since he's going to have to grab somebody in form. Right. When you lose a player like Pepe, you have to replace him with someone that's a known quantity, and you grab the hot hand. Needs the hot hand.
Right, and I would probably assume if Brandon Vasquez gets off to a hot start in Austin, he's probably going to be a part of that mix as well too. I would probably assume we're going to see something close to what's going to look like the 2026 World Cup roster for the Nations League, and we'll probably see more of that in 2025 than not. So I would probably assume when everything is full strength, those 3 are probably going to be the strikers that we'll see in 2026. But, it's worth mentioning as far as the U.S. men's national team is concerned that Josh Sargent is back, and at least Pochettino has a 9 for the Nations League semifinal. All right, let's go ahead and get into this now. It's time for the Eastern Conference. We're going to start there because the Columbus Crew, man, they didn't lose one, but they lost 2 strikers this offseason. The big one, obviously, is Cucho Hernandez, who I thought should have won MLS MVP last year. He goes to Real Betis for $16 million. I think that's actually pretty good business for the Columbus Crew. They also lose Christian Ramirez to the LA Galaxy. That being said, they did retain Diego Rossi. They also have Jason Russell-Rowe. Let me ask you a question real quick, Ty. Number one, how big of a loss is this? Because, it's Cucho. That's number one. But also, is this a situation where Wilfred Nancy, it's Wilfred Nancy. I mean, he's been through this before with Montreal, where he took them to second Eastern Conference without really much of an attack. It seems like this is not anything that's going to make him sweat a little bit. They, like I mentioned, they do have the young Jason Russell Rowe, and they still have Diego Rossi. What's going on in Columbus right now?
I wish I had an answer for what's going on because I have absolutely no idea. No, the loss of Cucho Hernandez, I mean, Isatal said it best. When he flew out to England to speak with Cucho Hernandez during his last few stages at Watford, the plan was come to Columbus, get significant playing time, regain your confidence, get back overseas, wherever you may go, get called up to the Colombian national team, consistently make World Cup squad. So far, they've nailed about 4 of the 5 of the 6, however many I just listed. They've nailed it all, right? It's pretty big for Columbus because not only Diego Rossi can match maybe about half of the stats that Cucho put up last season, but you're not going to get a 19 goal, 14 assists out of Diego Rossi, right? You'll be lucky to get 15 goals, 9 assists at that, right? So you're also not getting a 9 who can drop back in front of the back 3, collect the ball, and ping it all the way out wide to an ongoing Mo Farsi or Max Arfston to start a counterattack, 3v2, whatever that may be. So the loss of Cucho Hernandez is big. But again, you said it yourself. Wilfred Nancy took Montreal to second and East with a lot less. So it's going to be weird seeing who Columbus brings in if they do bring in anybody. Also going to be weird not seeing Cucho Hernandez run out on the field in his number 9 jersey. But at the end of the day, it is a business. I get it.
Sure.
I think the $16 million personally is a little bit too low for the production that Cucho Hernandez gave us last year. But at the same time, maybe it made sense for Real Batiste to make that to give that $60 million and then kind of build up his confidence of playing in La Liga, build up his stamina, build up his fitness to play against teams like Barcelona, Real Madrid, Atletico Madrid, Conference League games in right. UEFA, right? On the flip side, you lose Christian Hernandez, who was a game changer coming off the bench. Forced 2 goals against Cincinnati in the Eastern Conference Final in 2023. He's the tallest guy on the team. You're losing a game changer in crucial moments off the bench to where now it's like, okay, who do we have that can kind of replicate Christian Ramirez and his style of play? You don't want to have, somebody beat Christian Ramirez in their own skin. You don't want to have, I want this guy to be like Christian Ramirez every other way. I said this about when Diego Rossi came to Columbus and everybody was comparing him to Lucas Zelarayan. They're 2 different 10s just in their own style. You want to have somebody who can change the game in their own style and benefit the team off the bench like Christian Ramirez did. It's a move that I like. Southern California native, Garden Grove. He's back home. Family was out there when Columbus Crew played LAFC and they won 5-1. He had his whole family, friends there. When he scored the opening goal, he celebrated with them. So it's a move back home, and I'm not surprised that when you see moves like this where a player starts somewhere, travels around, and it gets back home, it could signal the end of a career. So if this does lead to a retirement for Christian Ramirez, it's gone full circle, and he's had one hell of a career.
Jason Russell Rowe, 9 goals, 6 assists, and 1,788 MLS minutes. It seems like he's going to start the season, or do you expect Columbus to maybe make a move because they do have some wiggle room and they do have a DP spot open? Is this something where you expect something before the start of the season, or is this more of a summer transfer type of move?
It's interesting you said that because Wilfred Nancy said that the club expects to make moves before the start of the season on February 22nd when we play the Chicago Fire. But little has been even going around. There's been talks of Miguel Borja from he's a Colombian native also. I have talked with multiple people that was like not even a thing. It was probably just an interest stage, but no formal contact had been made. You have another River Plate guy, I can't remember who it is, that's very good friends with Andres Herrera, who's on loan from River Plate to Columbus. They have a good friendship, so maybe that could be something, but again, an interest stage at that. With the season kind of right around the corner, a week from Saturday, I don't see anything happening. If it does, it's going to be probably one shock move, but nothing too extravagant. I do see Jason Russell-Rowe getting a lot more time, starting with Diego Rossi. Diego Rossi can build up his confidence, build up Jason's confidence, that is, and get him goals, get him, the way that he wants to play to continue making a Canadian national team. If it's going to be a move, it's going to be one sporadic move, but it's probably not going to be anybody who can, come right in right away and start as a striker. You got to get used to the league, got to get used to the possession style, the tactics of Wilfried Nancy. So it's going to be hit or miss come opening, come first kick. But I expect Columbus to make a full-fledged hit come summer.
Fair enough. Before we swing back to the Western Conference, I got to talk to you about Max Arfson. I thought he had a very good January camp with the U.S. men's national team. What is the expectation for Arfson this year?
Continue what he's been doing, right? You see Yao Yeboah go down middle of the season last year. Max Arfson comes in. He's taken the chance at every time he gets to play to better himself, better the team. And he's done it, right? He eventually took over that starting left wing back spot over Yao Yeboah, who's now at LAFC, and has scored goals, created assists. He has a good cut inside on his right foot, even though he's better on his left. He can cut in on his right foot. He can serve a ball with his left. He has the speed to get towards the end line, center a ball towards the top of the 6-yard box, penalty spot area. The expectation is just now, can we get a little bit more out of him? And that's what Wilfried Nancy wants from his players. He challenges them every day to give just a little bit more every day in training. You gave me 80%. Can you give me 82%? Next day, 84, 86, etc., and so on. So I think the expectation now is, hey, you're now the starting left wing back spot unless we put you up front with Jason, Diego, and whoever else it is, and bring in DeJuan Jones on that left wing back spot. But I think with him on the left wing back spot, I think he's more of a playmaker than he is a goal scorer because of how good he is on his left and being able to serve in a ball towards, when we had him, Ramirez, Cucho, Diego Rossi, and whoever else is going to be on the end of that ball at the back post. Can we get a little bit more from you now, the next game? Right.
And with the transfer business of young U.S. players heading overseas, we saw John Tolkien make the move to the Bundesliga, and everybody's asking who could be that next under the radar move overseas. I actually think Max Arfson is going to be one of those guys, potentially along with a Jack McGlynn in the next couple of years. I really like. I think the upside of Arfson is just unbelievable. Turning to the Western Conference, Jeff, our Seattle Sounders had actually a very good offseason. I think that was expected after the playoff run that we had. I think it really kind of highlighted in the Houston series where when teams deploy a low block against Seattle and how hard they tried to break down a low block, but just couldn't find that extra pass in the attacking third. They go out this offseason and bring in Jesus Ferreira from Dallas. Ferreira himself didn't necessarily have the greatest year last year, but they also paired that with Paul Arriola. You and I both know how Brian Schmetzer operates that attack. They brought back Albert Rusnik, I believe, on a 1-year deal. They still have Jordan Morris in the fold. Pedro de la Vega is coming back, and I would probably assume that he's going to be the prime candidate for a bounce back. I would like to think that attack is going to be dependent on de la Vega having a bounce back. First and foremost, what do you think about Seattle's transfer business this offseason? And how would you rate it in the scope of the Western Conference?
It's a very good offseason. I think the Arriola move is the sort of move that teams that don't have massive glaring needs get, because they can bring a guy in and put into spots. Like Seattle has some depth. They have good players in a lot of places. The Ferreira move was ambitious because you lose a Rui Diaz, who had been past his prime, but was still such a big part of things for so long. We were talking about this off camera. I think we're going to find out a lot when Seattle plays Louisville this week, how that gets deployed, because they have a friendly. Seeing Morris pushing up top, kind of clearing a path, and Ferrara running around behind him, De La Vega kind of outside in, that sets up your midfielders to the Rusnaks to be able to find people that are not necessarily as predictable as spaces. It could create some more goals, because that was the biggest problem last year, was getting that finish, and this might create a little more of a dynamic approach to the Seattle front that they didn't have last year successfully.
Yeah, that's 100% true. I mean, there was a lot of times last season where if Jordan Morris was not scoring and they figured out a way to neutralize Albert Rusnak, that team really was not scoring a lot unless it was off a set piece. But you mentioned that with Jordan Morris up there clearing the way for a Jesus Herrera, that almost insinuates that this team is probably going to go back to the 4-4-2 with two up top. Rusnak underneath, and then a combination of De La Vega, Paul Arriola on the wing.
Yeah, it does speak to the personnel that they have that would feel obvious. De La Vega has to have the breakthrough season this year, especially after his first year was not what they had hoped for, or we're going to see even more of Arriola in that role. But De La Vega is a little bit of a wild card with that. I think that as long as Ferrer is healthy, and as long as Morris is healthy, as long as Rusnak is healthy, we're going to get what we expect out of them. We need to get what they wanted out of De La Vega and didn't get before. He has that big season. It frees up a lot of other options for them, and suddenly they have a much more difficult team to defend. It was just keep a body on Jordan. And now it's, well, if Jordan clears a body, you have Jesus coming behind. This was a little bit like early MLS when they had Jaquo running through and Montero in behind. This has a real feel of something similar to that. Then you had players like Zakawani on the wing. Well, that becomes De La Vega. And you start seeing kind of some of what Schmetzer was a part of when Ziggy was there coming through again, and that they've had success with before, and in a formula that they're going to be comfortable with deploying, and a solid defense. So the wild card element of De La Vega being a more valuable signing this year is such a big part of it.
100%. I mean, we haven't seen. I mean, we've been basically seeing the Sounders, rock with a 4-2-3-1 double pivot for so long that it, I kind of have to go back in the memory banks a little bit to remember when the Sounders were, under Siggy, were a 4-4-2 team. But that being said, I was quite impressed as well too. Swinging back to the Eastern Conference, Ty. Atlanta United is a very intriguing team. Joining the front office from Miami is somebody that Jeff and I are very well familiar with, is Chris Henderson. He leaves Miami for a even better position inside that front office, and their transfer business. They brought back last year. I mean, obviously they brought in Moranchuk, but this offseason they bring in Miguel Almiron from Newcastle United, a former name. They also brought in an interesting name on a kind of a hefty price tag, Emmanuel Latte-La, which to me it seems kind of interesting. Although they did, I think Home Dude ended up finally retiring their CD. God, why can't I think of his name right? It doesn't matter. Anyway, so for the most part, Atlanta comes back off what I thought was a very decent playoff showing. It looks on paper that they have improved. Tell me a little bit about Atlanta United and their place in the Eastern Conference this year.
Atlanta United is a very, how can I say this, intriguing team, quite honestly, right? I mean, it's hard to play. It's hard to play in Atlanta, right? The Mercedes-Benz Stadium. turf aside, it's one of those stadiums where it's so big and it's so loud that it's kind of intimidating to other teams. Now you look at the roster. They bring back Miguel Almiron, who was probably one of the best midfielders, attacking midfielders, when Atlanta came into the league, paired with Joseph Martinez. You have Emmanuel, the guy from Middlesbrough, who is probably going to be one of the most dangerous strikers in the league this year.
Yeah.
You still have Brad Guzan. You still have Marinchuk. You still have Saba. You know, this team that we just brought back from the upset over Miami in the playoffs is looking a little bit more like a team that was 2017 or was 2018 MLS Cup champions, right? So I think I wouldn't go that far yet, but give it time. I'd probably say that if everybody's healthy, you know, and I can't remember who their coach is.
They brought in a new coach this year too.
Yeah.
By the way, Dax McCarty was the name that I was thinking of. Dax. Yeah, the forever journeyman retired this offseason. But I will say that, for a price tag of $22 million, I think that was the final price tag. Emmanuel Latte Lob. A lot of people are saying, well, wait a second. For that type of price tag, you want to bring in somebody that's, established at a higher league. You're bringing in a guy from essentially the championship to Major League Soccer. So there's a lot of question marks about. You mentioned earlier when we were talking about Columbus. The thing about bringing in a guy, he's got to adjust to the league a little bit. And that's kind of the questions around Latte Lob, is whether or not he's going to be able to hit the ground running, because they're expecting him to. I mean, when you pay a price tag like that, you're expecting fireworks literally from the word go.
Yeah, and you're also expecting them to be in that MVP running that you're competing with Messi. You want to be in the Golden Boot race. You're competing with Messi. It's going to be difficult because you just don't want to bring in a guy and just throw him to the wolves, right? You kind of want to ease him in little by little, get a feel for how different teams play and how the league is, how the officials are in this league also, because it's up and down. But it's looking like that this Atlanta team is going to be better than what they were last year. So as far as place goes, I'm probably saying 5th or 6th, right? But maybe it's, if they are on one, possibly 4th. I think it just depends on health and performance-wise.
Fair enough, man. Fair enough. Jeff, as we swing back to the Western Conference, the defending MLS champions, obviously last year lose Ricky Puig. He's gone until probably the late summer, coming back from the knee injury. They also sent away their target 9. They sent him to Kansas City for $4 million, and they replaced him with Christian Ramirez. And it looks like, as of right now, the 10 position is probably going to go to Marco Royce, as Marky Delgado goes to the rivals across town, to LAFC. A lot of movement with the LA Galaxy in the West. There's a lot of movement with them as far as the roster goes. You mentioned off camera that you don't expect the LA Galaxy to repeat.
No, you can't. You can't count on Puig being not just back, but in form anytime before September, October. So you can't bank on it. It's hard to repeat. We were a little surprised they did it in the first place. The West is a fairly top heavy conference, dealing with the crosstown rivals, dealing with Seattle. We're going to see how Seattle is as they come through. Real Salt Lake will still be good, and so will Vasquez make Austin better? Will the playoff pool be deeper than it was last year? It's going to be hard for LA to repeat. And you can't sit there and just go, well, we'll get a guy back from injury and then expect him just to be able to step in and play again. Coming back from that when you're months and months and months off, it's just too much to ask to be immediately effective. You can come back and be a good player, but to come back and carry a team to a championship is too much to ask off of the injury.
And not to mention the loss of Joveljic also.
Yeah.
How can you you lose your top striker? How can you replace that? You know,
Well, yeah,
and
and Joveljic, such a boost for Kansas City, kind of out of the blue. And this gets in with the whole new straight cash thing that they're allowed to do, as opposed to just the allocation money, just the flat out cash transfer. Kansas City was just like, here's cold hard cash. We need this guy. And if you're Joveljic, he couldn't get a DP slot in LA. It wasn't there. So not only does he accept transfer in a move like that, but he gets paid. So that's a great move for him. It helps a Kansas City team that didn't look like they were going to be necessarily that dangerous, but they definitely are going to be more dangerous now. Late season. The question is, how much time do you have to incorporate a guy? You're going to have to incorporate in with real-time matches, as opposed to a training. You don't get the month and a half of training with a guy. Suddenly a week later, he's playing a real game. That's going to be the biggest challenge that they have. That's why I think this year, the summer transfer window and the summer break and all the different things is going to make for such a chaotic first half of the season. Everybody kind of jockeying for position as opposed to really worrying about where they are, just making sure that they're close. And so if you're a Kansas City or you're a San Jose or you're in Austin, you can get close from the bottom, knowing that the top is still going to be pretty good. You have to take a chance at it. And Kansas City making a move like that definitely was surprisingly ambitious, for February.
Oh, for sure. Ty, you actually mentioned something very interesting, right? LA loses the goal production of Joveljic. And obviously Ricky Puig is out, but also Paintsels, I think, is going to start the season injured as well too. So outside the only guy that's, I guess you can say, proven right now is going to be Gabriel Peck right now, right? So the question is where are they going? How are they going to at least recreate that production in the aggregate to start the season? That's to me is that
they're not.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're not. Yeah. I mean, it's just they're not going to have a fast start. It will be a shock if they have a fast start.
I think the biggest question is now, can Greg Vanning kind of lean on Christian Ramirez, very established striker? Can he not put up, Joveljic numbers, but can he make some sort of impact to where he's going to be picked game in, game out to make the Galaxy have at least a decent start to the half with the absence of Puig, Paintsel, and playing alongside Gabriel Peck, right? So you have Peck, you have an established striker in Ramirez, but you're still missing the flashy Puig. You're still missing Joseph Paintsel running down. What's he, a right winger, left winger?
Left winger.
Left winger.
Yeah.
And you now sold off Joveljic to Kansas City. How can Greg Vanning get the best out of Ramirez, who has played at least one or two games, I think, with LA Galaxy at the Coachella Valley Invitational, but now can we get him to kind of be the Ramirez that we've seen him with Columbus, game in and game out, now getting normal minutes as a starter until LA either get a new number 9 or hell, even get Puig back and Paintsel back.
Yeah, I mean, LA can still be decent, but the difference between being decent and competing to actually win the Western Conference is too big a gulf to make up for with what they've lost, even with what they still have. It's just too big a loss. And then it's too big an if he's able to come back in the summer, if he's able to be fit and ready to go, if he can be effective coming off the injury. That's just too much to ask. If it doesn't look like it, don't be shocked if LA splashes some money in July.
Yeah, but they would probably have to open up a DP spot. Yeah.
They could definitely splash some money in the summer. If they do, it means that Puig isn't ready. That'll be our big hint as to where they think he is if LA gets ambitious in the transfer window in the midseason.
Hey Ty, of the Eastern Conference heavy, whether that be Inter Miami, Columbus, Cincinnati, even Orlando, maybe even the New York Red Bulls, if they actually show some balls and bring in that big DP signing that I think everybody has been waiting for a while. Was there a team from that top 5 from last year that you felt had a very good offseason as far as their business, or what did you make of it?
I mean, let's just get the obvious out of the way. Columbus did not have a good offseason, obviously. Cincinnati, not a good offseason, unless they sign Evander, which is probably what's going to happen. Miami, you just have the big four. That's pretty much it. They're getting old. But, I mean, Red Bulls, I can see Red Bulls having a good offseason, maybe a good start to the season. You know, they beat out the reigning champions last year in the first round of the playoffs. Yeah, they lose John Tolkien, but I'm pretty sure they kept Dante Van Zier. They still have Cornell in net. They're going to have, I can't even remember, Lewis Morgan, who's still there. So Red Bulls, possibly. I know New York City is kind of a hit or miss team, and it's looking like Santi Rodriguez could be on his way out. You know, it's all of these. Could this happen? Could this not happen? I think the East is kind of wide open, honestly, if you think about it.
Right, because that was going to lead to my next question. Like, is it like, you know, I think you painted that picture absolutely excellent, because it actually opens the door for a potential dark horse to not only take what they built on last year, run up the table, and potentially make a deep run in the Eastern playoffs. Is there a dark horse out there in the Eastern Conference that you have circled? Like, it's like, you know, this is actually not a team to mess around with. Is there a dark horse for you?
I mean, just looking at the table from last year, it kind of sucks that Philly was 9-15, because that team is honestly very good when they're healthy and whatnot. I think the loss of Jim Curtin kind of really just is going to deplete the season. But at the same time, Bradley Carnell, who took St. Louis City to the Western Conference Final in its first year, was absolutely amazing. Took a year off, didn't coach anywhere. Now he's with Philadelphia. Kai Wagner, Andre Blake is back. You have, I can't remember if they still have Ty Baribo or not, but this Philadelphia team, what Jim Curtin did with them was absolutely phenomenal, right? I probably wouldn't say that's my dark horse, but it's definitely a contender. I'd say my dark horse is probably this Atlanta United team that we talked about earlier, right? They've brought in a couple players. Miguel Almiron's a fan favorite. I think he's done very well with Newcastle. He knows the league. He knows how it's played. He's familiar with Atlanta United, etc. So he's probably going to pick up right where he left off when he left. You have that $22 million striker that they brought in. We talked about it earlier. But I think with how Atlanta United is built and structured, I think that they are the one team that is going to give teams problems, because they've been giving teams problems recently. They've just been hit with injuries or suspensions and all this fun stuff. I mean, there was that whole back and forth between, I think it was Bocanegra and I can't remember who it was. He was a Seattle guy. I know that.
Their former head coach. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
there was a back and forth between him and the front office and whatnot. There's some internal problems, but if you look at him externally, I think that this team led by Brad Guzan is just absolutely crazy good. And we had problems with them last year. Columbus did. So, if anything, Atlanta United has built their team back up to fight for a championship, to fight for a playoff spot, a home playoff seed at that, instead of going right on the road. So it's one of those things where, can they live up to the hype that they're getting from everybody else? And if they do, that's my dark horse.
And by the way, you mentioned the Philadelphia Union. Bradley Carnell is their new head coach, who wants to play more of an up-tempo attacking style football, which is one of the reasons why they made Jack McGlynn available for Houston. Doesn't necessarily fit the style and attack that he wants to have, but I think you highlighted that beautifully. As you know, Philadelphia is going to be healthy to start the season. I got to be honest with you, man. My dark horse in the East, and I would agree with you as far as like making a deep run into the playoffs. The Atlanta United is certainly poised, and it looks like on paper that they have that potential to do that. But for me, like the Montreal Impact are that team that I kind of have circled, because I love it when teams make a commitment to youth and then they hit on every and the guys that they bring in, all of a sudden they hit. Last year they made the playoff game, made the play-in game. I think they lost, and they ended up losing to Atlanta United. This offseason they bring in Jalen Neal. And I'm a big fan of Jalen Neal. I understand that maybe the fit wasn't great with the LA Galaxy, but now he's got a team that's going to be willing to commit starting minutes, and he just fits in the overall scheme with what Montreal is doing up there. Do I think that they're going to win the East? I don't. But do I think that they have the potential of grabbing a playoff spot without having to go through the plan? 100%. And, once you get to the MLS playoffs, as we saw last year in the East, anything can happen in that first round. To me, I look at the Montreal Impact and I'm like, that, like, if they add like one or two shrewd moves to add to that team, that could be a very dangerous team.
And that's one thing that head coach Laurent Courtois is big on, right? He was the head coach at Columbus Crew 2. He led them to the inaugural MLS Next Pro Championship, led them to another final the next year where they lost to Austin FC. But if you look at all the people that played for Courtois underneath him at Crew 2, Jason Russell-Rowe led the league in goals. Mo Farsi. Then you had, I can't remember who else, but you had players under Courtois who went on to sign first-team contracts or go somewhere else. Noah Fuson, Marco Micheletto, right? Yeah, they're not in MLS, but they're with USL Championship teams that do great, right? Yeah. Rhode Island FC. Now I think Marco's at New Mexico United. But Courtois is so invested in youth and developing youth to where it's second to none, right? And that's why him and Coach Nazi were so great together, because they ran the same style. They're both French descent, so they both have the same understanding of a tactical possession of a team that can absolutely dominate the ball in possession and then just break down a team no matter what happens at the beginning of the game, middle of the game, end of the game. And that's why the Columbus Crew was so lethal in 23 and 24, was because of how Nancy and Courtois were with their respective teams.
How much is the shadow of Miami crashing out last year and knowing that we're kind of near the end of Messi going to play and everybody looking, is Miami going to be coming with a chip on their shoulder that's just going to be is that shadow looming over, or is the wheels just going to fall off because that team is old?
Well, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, you've already got a blown tire on Luis Suarez's legs.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's the thing with Miami, right? The thing with Miami, with Miami is like, yeah, you have Barcelona B, right? But it's like, how far can a team really go relying on Jordi Alba, Sergio Busquets, Messi, and Luis Suarez to carry them to glory? I'll tell you, you can't do it much, because these guys are 35 plus, and nearing the end of their career. So who else?
I think it's why they crashed out against Atlanta in the first place.
It has to be, and it's like it sucks, because it's like, man, why can't Seattle, Dallas get all these great players that are well known around the world? And then it's like, well, okay, Miami is owned by David Beckham. David Beckham was a great player at Manchester United, played great for the Galaxy. Why can't we do this? It's one of those things. It's like, man, I wish I was like that. But when you beat them, it's like, damn, it feels good. We're actually relevant.
Well, Miami's the outlier, right? They're the only team that's invested in former European stars. The rest of the league has that commitment to youth and development, whether it be American talent or South American talent. But the biggest loss easily was Chris Henderson to Atlanta. I mean, and Jeff and I know about that. Chris Henderson in the South American pipeline paid dividends with Seattle. led them to 2 championships and 4 MLS Cups in 5 years at one point, right? So, for him to go to Atlanta, that franchise is drastically going to change as long as Garth Lagerwey and Chris Henderson are paired up together down there. Jeff, same question to you that I had with Ty in the Western Conference, though, because I got to be honest with you, I didn't like the transfer business of LAFC. They lost a lot of good pieces. Matty Boguj goes to Cruz Azul. I think they lost Ocampos, and they lost what was his name? They're one of their center mids. His name is escaping me right now. I'm reading through the chart myself. Testa. There you go. Yeah. And when you thank you very much for that. And when you look at the top 4 of where the top 4 teams that finished in the standings last year outside of Seattle, it looks like a lot of the top heavies in the Western Conference kind of step back a little bit. In your estimation, who did you like? I mean, outside of Seattle, was there another team that you had circled that had a very good offseason this year?
Not at first. I think it's been later. The Kansas City making the move, Vasquez in at Austin, those sorts of moves. Dallas looked like they were resetting, and now that whole perspective has changed. I didn't like a lot of the off seasons until then. It's very clear that San Jose is going to be an organized team with Bruce. That's going to be a redemption arc. Are they going to get 2002 World Cup Bruce or 2006 World Cup Bruce? We don't know. And so it's going to be interesting to see how some of those teams play out. Minnesota had a nice little, late run. One of those teams could definitely pop up and do it. Real Salt Lake and Seattle probably will still be pretty good. I think Seattle's biggest challenge is still the calendar more than anything else. Yeah. Just everything that they have to face, trying to peak in June and then peak in, and that's going to affect Miami and the wheels on Miami too, especially playing in those sorts of matches, because Seattle's got to get ready for, Paris Saint-Germain and Atletico Madrid. Like that's a weird sentence to say. They have to be ready to play cup matches against PSG and thing. And those are going to be such a spotlight and such a different thing that they have to take a different approach to their entire season. You're going to see a lot of things spread out amongst Seattle minutes wise. We'll have a lot of questions answered in the early stage with the Champions Cup and the first couple of MLS matches where we really see what gets deployed, what kind of rotation Brian's going with that. But back to your question, so I don't think that I thought teams like Kansas City and stuff are going to be much better. And now all of a sudden, you throw Jovic, it's a different equation. I think it changes so much of the way that everybody thought the off-season had gone to have these kind of late moves. And now it's like, well, it just throws a big monkey wrench in all of it.
Ty mentioned in the Eastern Conference that it almost feels like it's up for grabs. I kind of feel that way in the Western Conference as well, too. It's going to be interesting to see what Steve Cherundolo does there with LAFC. I think a lot of people are assuming that Antoine Griezmann is probably going to come sometime in the summer. Obviously, San Diego FC is going to join the Western Conference as well, too. But when I look at some of these teams, Houston losing Hector Herrera and Cascarilla, replacing with Jack McGlynn, that's kind of interesting. It seems like Minnesota's going to be running it back. But is there a dark horse out there that you like in the Western Conference?
I'm starting to like seeing what Kansas City doing bring in Jovic. I feel like that's an established team that's had success before, and now they've brought in a guy that can kind of give them a little bit of a spark. They're not going to be playing with a lot of expectation, and he can go out there and kind of live up to that move. They make that move because you don't make a move like that unless you think it's going to make you better, and that's right. Not just a splashy marketing move. That's a let's get us a guy. So maybe a Kansas City could do it. Minnesota could make a run again. Those would be the teams that I would look at because they're going to be organized and consistent, and then they make runs in cups and playoffs, and that's what Kansas City teams have done before. And so that's where I'd go with that.
The team that intrigues me the most in the Western Conference is Real Salt Lake. the moves that they made last summer when they brought in Dominic Marzik and Lachlan Brook, and they still have Diego Luna, who is one of my favorite players in the Western Conference. Like if they can get that number 9 to replace Chicho Arango.
It's hard to think of them as a dark horse though, because they were 3rd seed.
Right. I get it. But it's Real Salt Lake though.
Yeah, I think they'll be good. But it's hard to think of them as a dark horse. To me, it's the teams that would be bouncing back or doing something surprising. A team like Austin that just fell short, now they go and make the big splashy move. Basket. If he starts scoring goals, suddenly they find themselves above the playoff line. That's a dark horse sort of thing.
Fair enough.
But Real Salt Lake is an intriguing team. Absolutely.
Yeah. I realize it, man. I don't know. Like Real Salt Lake intrigues the hell out of me. But all right. So before we get into the final question, Jeff, who wins Cascadia this year?
Seattle.
By how much?
I think that Portland's not going to be good. Vancouver will be decent, and then Seattle will win it. But I mean, last year everything came down to goal difference. Like it was. Right. I think it was total goal. Like it was all tiebreakers. Those matches are so much fun. I mean, I know that Ty, Hell's Reel's become such a great. Having Cascadia here and Hell's Reel, it's like those matches are actually different. If you haven't experienced what a true rivalry type of environment is, players do respond to that. Like I think good players dig it. They jump on that stuff and go in, and you've seen that with like Seattle and Portland and Vancouver here, how much when they bring in a Ladero and then they start telling Nico, it comes, all right, Portland, man, here we go, and you just see it. You see the way players like Dempsey buy into it when they had no history with it in their own past. Those rivalry matches are different, but I do think that Portland's got some problems, and Seattle's going to be pretty solid. So I just think Seattle's just going to be the better team.
I wouldn't be surprised if towards the end of the season, as we get to decision day, I wouldn't be surprised if Seattle is top of the list. I think they're the most complete team coming in. It all depends on how they navigate the CONCACAF Champions League and how they navigate Leagues Cup and the Club World Cup. It's going to be interesting. And also, are they actually going to make some summer moves to freshen things up? Seattle, I think, for the 3rd straight year last year, did no summer business. And I think that was kind of evident late in the season last year. But all right, so by the way, Ty, how does the Hell is Real play out this year?
Oy, put me on a spot. I
Don't be a homer. Actually, no. Go ahead, be a homer, because Jeff and I are 100% homers.
I honestly think it's going to be split, one each. I think we'll probably win the leg here in Columbus, but I think Cincinnati is going to definitely win their leg in Cincinnati because TQL Stadium is a different monster, man. It's so nice down there.
I got to get up there and try that one out. I got to get it just to see.
Yeah, I'm hoping to get down to Ohio to check out one of those legs this summer. So we'll see how that plays out. All right, as we come into the end of the show, we got just a couple more questions left. Number one, CONCACAF Champions League. How does it play out for MLS sides this year? Is there going to be an MLS winner this year? And we'll start with Jeff.
I think that the MLS clubs could do pretty good. I think the format suits them. Especially getting these kind of earlier matches like we're getting in February. I think that these sort of things can. Seattle's ready to go and kind of chomping at the bit to go play a real game. They've looked pretty good in their matches in Spain against European clubs and from Norway and whatnot. I think Seattle's just ready to get out of the gate. They have a big year ahead of them. They want to get off to a good start. They're going to go roaring into it. No reason not to think that the CONCACAF clubs looking at this as an international year just don't. The MLS clubs want to win the international tournaments this year. I think that's going to be a heavy focus for clubs across the board, whether it be Leagues Cup, FIFA, or the international focus is just going to be teams are just going to be motivated to win.
Ty?
I think just by looking at the bracket, a lot of teams in the MLS are kind of split, but a lot of more on the left hand side. So you're bound to get at least an MLS team within the semifinals. But I think if teams play it right, because this is going to be crazy for the schedule. If teams play it right, I think we could see an MLS team win it. But there's something about CONCACAF and
Right.
league teams that just go well together.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
But it-
CONCACAF happens every once in a while, basically. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
but it's like how are MLS teams going to navigate the altitude in reverse fixtures going down to Mexico?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. The next question is Leagues Cup. Is it going to be? Is it going to be an all MLS affair in the semifinal for the third straight year, or are we actually going to see Liga MX teams actually give a damn?
See, with the new format, right? It's kind of odd because you're basically aiming for an MLS and League MX club in the final, right? Because, for example, Columbus, they announced their Leagues Cup schedule today. We have Toluca, Puebla, and Leon, right? So you're kind of, just by looking at the format and looking where teams could go and whatnot, you're kind of destined for an MLS and Liga MX final. But then again, MLS teams took it a lot more serious last year than Liga MX teams, in my opinion, because I think Liga
100%.
MX teams were more focused on the CONCACAF Champions Cup and getting that Club World Cup spot. So I
100%.
think possibly it could be an MLS final again. I would love it because I want us to defend our title. But at the same time, with there's so many puzzle pieces, right? I don't know if there's going to be one shock Liga MX team that just absolutely cruises to the entire thing.
Yeah, and also the summer transfer window is going to affect that tournament so much.
Yeah,
because a Seattle has got to peak in June and then take a deep breath. If they make a move, and if a De La Vega, pops the way that they hope he does, they don't necessarily feel the pressure to make a move like that this year. Whereas I think if he's struggling again, they're going to feel like they have to. But we're going to definitely see the MLS clubs keep making a run at it because they love being able to beat Mexican teams in televised matches with big crowds. Like that is a thing that MLS just likes doing, right? And if the Liga Mexican teams don't come in loaded and ready to go, it's going to keep being an MLS dominant tournament.
And one thing to put in your guys' mind really quick is that both regular seasons are still going to be going on while Leagues Cup is going on. So how both leagues navigate that with players and minutes is going to be very interesting.
100%. I think last year kind of highlighted for me how much Liga MX teams were taking this seriously. I think it was either Club America or it was Chivas Guadalajara went up to the Bay Area to play San Jose. I think they were doing it at Levi Stadium, and in front of a packed crowd. I think San Jose walked all over Chivas Guadalajara, and it's like in no way, shape, or form should that ever happen, even on a neutral site. That should never happen. But me personally, I'd like to see they went to a new format, so it's 18 sides, 18 sides per draw. I'd like to see some type of pot format where if there's eight groups, whatever the case may be, I'd like to see half stationed in Mexico. You know what I mean? Like there's no movement, so you're going to be playing in one of two places, and at least you have group stages going on down in Mexico, so at least the Mexican fans have an opportunity to see their teams down there. I actually think that with an opportunity in front of Mexican fans, I think you probably would get the best out of Mexican sides. For them to be stationed in the United States, even in border states, it almost feels like they're just trying to get through this as quick as possible. If they win, great, and if not, whatever.
Yeah, and it has a little bit of an Open Cup feel to the Mexican teams. Teams, some teams take it seriously. A few of them do, just like with the Open Cup here in the U.S. and with Mexico being the 2-season playoff, they have that unique format to their league in general, and how important it is in Mexico to win the Mexican League more than anything else. Like there is a real you've got you got to be the top team in Mexico. Bragging rights there is such a big part of that sporting culture.
100%. Last 2 questions left. Does a MLS side make it out of the group stages of the Club World Cup?
Well, I wish I could talk about that, but Columbus isn't really in that since our spot was given to Miami. But I think the way that MLS clubs can make it out of the group stage is just neutralize the attacking threats that every team has, right? The ones that are going to be the go-to people, right? Just neutralize those, kind of play your game a little bit, but maybe, as Wilfred Nazi does, pick a little bit more out of each player, give a little bit more. You're playing against world-renowned teams, right? Especially, I think, Seattle. You guys are playing against world-renowned teams. Dig in a little bit deeper. Give it your all. I think if you don't walk out of there with at least a cut or some blood on your shirt, you're doing it all wrong.
Yeah, and Seattle has to be so they have to get results against Atletico Madrid, this Atletico Madrid team. Like, this is a team that's competing for La Liga.
Yes.
That's a very good team.
PSG doesn't have the three-headed giant anymore, but they're still a good team. And then in Brazil,
Bradley Barcola.
You've got to win at least one of the European matches.
Yes.
And get one draw, just have a chance to finish in the top 2. Like, you can't lose 2 matches at all. So they've got to have an upset and a pretty good game and avoid a really bad game just to get out of the group, let alone win the tournament. That's just to get out of the group. This is a pretty stacked deck against them. I think if Seattle goes out and goes 1-1-1 and finishes in third, they can consider it a success. But getting out of the group is almost too much to ask for. I don't know. I think maybe one of them gets out, but I wouldn't. I think a good showing is more likely. The other part is the European teams are at the end of a year in a tournament that I don't think they want to play.
Oh, 100%.
So how much will Manchester City or Atletico Madrid be done and just not necessarily bring it and open up the door to a Seattle team that's going to be roaring and motivated with 70,000? That's going to be a full stadium
100%
for those things. Will Seattle have a chance to maybe have an imbalanced level of importance there at the end of what's a ridiculously long European season, an unhealthy, lengthy season?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a very interesting point, right? Because Seattle will be in mid-season form when that tournament rolls around, right? And most of those European clubs will have spent their load either getting through the Europa League, Champions League, and then through their own cup tournaments and leagues. By the time they get to American shores, you're absolutely right, Jeff. Right? Where's there going to be a motivation of a Manchester United or a PSG, Atletico Madrid? Is this going to be just like
they're going to get paid? But if you're Manchester City, you're going to be fighting just to get into the top 4, right? So it's like you're going to be running, and then it's like, and then we have to play this tournament, right? It's like, and I don't think it's a tournament a lot of players want.
Yeah, I happen to agree with you. All right, last question. Eastern Conference standout player, not necessarily MVP. Standout player that you believe is going to be making headlines, and who is your early season favorite to win it, the East?
I'd probably have to say Evander would be the standout. Right. The production that he gave Portland last year had him in constant talks in the MVP race. I think he finished like 4th, maybe in the MVP race, 3rd or 4th, one of the two.
I thought it was 3rd. Yeah, doesn't matter.
Yeah, one of the two.
He's an MVP candidate.
Yeah, MVP candidate. I think he's going to have a good production season with Cincinnati. That is if that deal goes through, which I'm pretty sure it's going to happen sooner rather than later. So I think that's probably going to be the standout player in the East because I think he's going to replicate that goal contribution with different competitors that he might have never seen before in the Eastern Conference because he played on the West. I think my early favorite to win it would have to be. Oh man, this sucks because it's so open. I'm probably going to stick with my dark horse and say Atlanta United.
Yeah, I'm going to go. Yeah, by the way, yeah, if Evander ends up in Cincinnati, that's the answer. But that being said, also watch out for Miguel Almiron coming back to Major League Soccer.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Miguel Almiron was something special before he left for Newcastle. Yeah, okay, it didn't work in the Premier League. Fair enough, you're back. But that being said, you're going to be anchoring a team with a new striker. Everything just looks different in Atlanta. If I had to put money somewhere, it'd probably be there. Jeff, same question to you in the Western Conference. Standout player for you, and who's your early season favorite to win the West?
Early season favorite to win the West, I think, is going to be somebody like Salt Lake. Seattle's got too much to navigate to necessarily get the kind of points to win a conference regular season. They've got too much roster management to do. I think that in Austin and in and a Ferreira in Seattle, guys that are fighting for World Cup spots, especially attacking World Cup roster spots with Pepe injured. You look to Austin, the big move there. You look to Seattle, the big move for. I think one of those guys has to have a breakthrough, just double in goals and assists. 30 plus goal contributions. One of those guys has to step up and do it. So I'm going to probably go with Vasquez in Austin. In Austin,
that's not a bad. That's not a bad
because they have so much to play for with Poach, right? So it's like they have a brief window to be the guy who's the guy in form, especially if Pepe's injury takes longer to heal than they think. And that opportunity there is just this giant carrot waiting for a guy to get on the good side of the new national team coach. And that's not just league play, but that can carry you over into an opportunity next year that maybe wouldn't happen if Pepe wasn't hurt. And they're going to have a chance. Somebody's going to grab that carrot. One of those guys.
Quick shout out to Chicho Arango and Joseph Martinez in San Jose. If that's played right, they're going to score a lot of goals this season. Brandon Vasquez 100% as well too. Although I think Saba left for River Plate. So in comes Brandon Vasquez, out goes their number 10. I don't know, man. Something tells me that this might be the year of Diego Luna, where he's going to be that young player, that young rising star with a lot of promise. To all of a sudden, you're going to start seeing, Diego Luna make some headlines, because he's also in that same boat as far as potentially fighting for a World Cup roster, especially after the January window that he had. Not many players will break their nose and then ask to go back into the game. So, that dude's got a brass set of balls on him, man. All right.
That's fair.
That's going to do it for us tonight. I want to thank Ty for coming on, man. It's always awesome having you on the show. Thanks for taking some time out of your night. Jeff, as always, man, I always appreciate you having me on the show, because, it's always good having another Seattle homer on the podcast. What can I say, man? We stack the deck. Go Sounders.
Go Sounders.
I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe buttons, and of course tune in on Friday night, because we have a very special guest from the Irish Hotspur. Dave Harris will stop by the podcast to talk a little Tottenham Hotspur as we get you set for the second half of the EPL season, most specifically the Tottenham Hotspur second half of the season, because for all those who are paying attention to the EPL, Spurs are having one of the worst seasons ever. So,
but they're not Manchester United, so
that's
terrible.
It could be worse. It could be worse.
It could be worse. They could be Manchester United right now. So,
by the way, before we go, why the hell did Ruben Amorim take that job?
Because it's Manchester United, and he's 39.
Understood, but none of those players fit his system.
No.
He
will be somewhere else in 2 years, just like every coach that they've hired in the last decade.
Poor Eric Ten Hag.
I'm not happy, man. I get so much pain watching this team that it sucks. It's worse than watching the Miami Dolphins lose to the freaking New York Jets on a Sunday afternoon.
But for as bad as Ten Hag won, they still won a trophy. They still won the FA Cup.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, you know, dude, we haven't lifted a trophy since 2008. We haven't won the FA Cup since 1991. We haven't won the league since 1961. Like
Dodger Stadium wasn't even open
been
yet the
forever
last
today.
time. Yeah. Yeah. No, I love the references like that. So yeah. 25 is just going to be a weird year in soccer though. It's going to be a weird year because this is such a weird calendar. And then going into the World Cup next year, it's players are in all in contract years because it's like trying to get into World Cup rosters. So.
Yeah.
All I know is that we will win Europa League, and we will march back up the table to finish in 8th. So
it's coming home,
that's all
man.
I'm saying.
It's coming home.
It's coming back to North London. All right. So I want to thank both Ty and Jeff for stopping by tonight. It was absolutely fun. Again, hit the like and subscribe buttons, and we'll see you on Friday for the Spurs edition of Stateside Footy. Thank you again, everyone. Have a good night.
Take care.